You know when you're sitting on the toilet and you're on your period, when you pee or something, or I don't know, you're changing your napkin or whatever, and then you stand up and then you see the evidence and you see that you've created like a really huge, like big clot, and you're like, wow, I made that. Isn't it so satisfying? Am I the only one who feels very satisfied when like a big clot just comes out of me? Like, wow, that could have been a baby, but it's a big clot. Okay, so now that all the men are gone,
the wonderful, beautiful podcast.
Full disclosure, half of this video I had to refilm because my SD card corrupted, which is amazing, by the way. So if there's any like inconsistencies in terms of like production design, specifically these little signs over here, they just entered today. That's the reason why. So proceed. When I was a kid and I would watch like TV, and there would be like the stereotypical white moms, not even like white moms, like stereotypical like cartoon moms, and they would like make their kids brownies and cookies or whatever when they read your kids stories or like little fairy tale story times. I always wanted that to happen for me. So I think there was a portion in my childhood where even though my mom was like very, very, very tired from work, I was like, can you read me a story? Like how I see them in the cartoons. And she was like, okay. But she never like, I didn't really have like books for fairy tales and stories. So she would just say like how she remembers the stories. This is related. I swear to God it is. So a significant classic that she would read to me, not really read to me, but say to me, is Beauty and the Beast. The story that she would tell me is like the original one. The one where it's like Belle actually has two older sisters or two sisters, and their father was gonna go on this like special little trip, and then they were like, what do you guys want as pasalubong? It's not Filipino. What do you guys want from the trip so I can get them for you? And all the sisters just really wanted some very shallow crap. But Belle, she's so special and she's so considerate. She said all she wants is a little rose. A little red rose. And then another story of Beauty and the Beast happened. And that's really like the most I remember from the original story. But then one day I watched Beauty and the Beast, like the movie from Disney. And it like changed my entire life. My whole life was changed. I watched it for like 3 days and I was like, oh my God, I'm so Belle. I'm such an intellectual. I don't judge people for their looks or whatever. I'm so sacrificial and all that. I'm an outsider, but everyone thinks I'm pretty. And I made it my whole personality. And so the next time that my mom was like, okay, let's read a story then. And then she told me about the whole, okay, Belle has two sisters. And I was like, no, she does not. And then I told her the entire story word for word. I'm not even word for word, scene by scene from the movie Beauty and the Beast by Disney Channel. And then I always wondered, why is it that my mom knows this completely different story from what I thought is the real story? Because obviously they made a movie about it and all movies are 100% accurate. And then at some point I was like introduced to the internet, and then the hyperfixation with Disney princesses became like worse. And so I would look up videos like, that's the original story of all these princesses, and it ruined my entire childhood, because what the literal were those stories? A lot of those fairy tales, like especially Sleeping Beauty, all of them were like minors, and there was so much SA involved, and they were all just like really, really dark. And I went into this dark rabbit hole, and I was like, okay, I guess this is the real one. And there was so much rape and pedophilia involved, and you'd think that, you know, the movie version would be like, oh, it's newer, they managed to censor all the rape out, but for some reason they're very adamant about keeping the pedophilia in all the stories. Like literally, if you look it up, almost all the princesses were minors, and almost all the princes were adults. Why? What is the appeal? How is it that they keep getting away with this? Granted, it's not like they really state the ages of these princesses in the movies and the stories. It's not like they would know that. And then again, do we ever really care about that when we watch stuff? Because we seem to be okay with Coco Martin and Julia Montes, or Liza Soberano and Enrique Hill. These are Filipino artists, by the way. They're all dating. Well, at least they all started out, you know, dating minors. One of them literally has babies with a minor, and I'm like, what is going on? And then there's also like EJ Laure and Bugoy. Every time I get reminded about EJ Laure and Bugoy, I just keep remembering the time when they were like, I don't know if they're still at it. They're in their content creator era. There was a time where like EJ Laure was getting like a bunch of hate. Oh, your wife is a groomer, because she actually is a groomer. Your wife is a groomer and she doesn't even have tits. Which, by the way, the body shaming is very unnecessary. I remember it so specifically. There was this line, or I don't know if it's like some kind of statement that Bugoy posted, and it was like, ano naman kung maliit ang Coco Melon ng asawa ko or something. And I'm like, kumain naman Coco Melon. How are people saying that he's supposed to be mature enough to be in a relationship when he's talking about female breasts and pertaining to them as Coco Melon? Anyways, that being said, a few disclaimers before we continue. I'm just gonna read it off. I'm not a lawyer, not a psychologist, not a journalist. I am really just a random feminist on the internet with a communication arts degree and internet connection who did her best to gather a bunch of information and curate them with my own opinions and biases. With that, as you should with all information that you get off of the internet, please be responsible and critical. Only you can decide what your opinion is, not a gorgeous goddess from YouTube, okay? Today we'll be discussing themes related to pedophilia, grooming, abuse, and the likes. For trigger warnings, all timestamps will be on screen or probably the description, as well as all the resources that's going to be mentioned in this video. What does masarap pag bagets mean? The term became popular after the release of a soap opera titled Katorse, which is about a 14-year-old girl who got pregnant by her boyfriend. As commented on a previous video I posted about misogyny in the Philippines, thank you guys for the insights and for suggesting this video in the first place. Bagets means, how do I translate bagets? Bagets means like young, like teenager, basically young. And masarap means tastes good. So if you put two and two together, it feels good or tastes good if they're younger, which is just a lot to unpack in there in the first place. I did try to look up, if Katorse, the soap opera, was actually very much influential to that term. I couldn't find anything. Then again, it's a very, very old show, and I don't know, I wasn't really there. I was probably very, very young when that was being said about minors, and I tried to do my research if that's actually very accurate, but I couldn't find anything. And then again, it has been very, very awkward looking up themes of pedophilia for hours upon hours. It's not fun doing the research for this video. Katorse, which translates to 14, is a Filipino soap opera about a girl, her name is Nene, who got pregnant at the age of 14. It is based off of a 1980s movie by Joey Goshingfao. I'm really good at pronouncing and reading stuff. The uncle of Elodia. Actually, fun fact. Now, I didn't have time to watch the whole show, obviously. Filipino soap operas run really, really long. But I watched like the first 3 episodes. I was looking at other people's opinions about it because, again, I didn't have time. And there wasn't really much summary that I could find. The most I could find was the log line of the show. But I did find a little blog. I'm not sure how reliable it is, but it's the most I could find. It's pretty old. And the writer's named Karil Katigbak, according to the username. Again, this is a blog post. It's not exactly a journal article. And I need to put that out there because I don't want to spread any sources that are not reliable or not necessarily, like journal articles. Let me just read you like an excerpt. Their conclusion is, the text says that becoming a teenage mother would entail much hardship, yet there is hope for security and social acceptance in educational and financial fulfillment. Katorse supports society's moralistic point of view about teenage pregnancy, yet it is lenient and optimistic about people who deviate from it. So I don't really know. Does the show really push abstinence? Probably, because based from their whole essay, it's kind of saying that, okay, don't have sex unless you're financially stable or you're already done with school. And the thing is, it's already been proven time and time again that abstinence is not an effective way to actually reduce teenage pregnancies. I don't know if that's still up for debate for some people, but the truth is, sexual people, they're gonna have sex whether you like it or not. So it's better to just educate teenagers and to educate people about it rather than force the whole abstinence thing and then slut shame other people, or then men will take like it's some kind of this weird trophy price. And anyways, I could go on and on about how counterproductive the whole abstinence thing is, but I digress. That's just me, my opinion, which is based on years upon years of research. I don't know if we know anything about Nana's character. She's the one who gets pregnant. I don't know if we know why she's like this. Is there a reason why she's so interested in male validation, or why she was a little easily manipulated to have sex? Things I'll never know, but I think it's also things to keep in mind when writing characters and stories that is meant to understand or give the world a point of view on teenage pregnancy, something as serious as teenage pregnancy. But from the 3 episodes I watched, I do have a couple of things I want to point out. This is in no way me hating on the show. I know it's very nostalgic to some people, and I know that the show did its best at its time. But here are just a few of my thoughts, okay? First of all, I listed them down. One is that similar to how it's already being handled in the Philippines right now, the show really puts most of the responsibility towards the women, at least in how the other characters interact with Nene. She's being told that you have to be careful, you have to do this, you have to do that. Meanwhile, the guy, his name's Gabby, which is Gabby's like the delinquent. No, he's not a delinquent, but he's like another troublesome teen. And they don't really get that much talk about him having to abstain or to be careful. It's always her that's being told to be careful and be responsible and, you know, be this and that. It's always her, not really much so the guy. I think as a society, we need to, again, I always say this, but I think we need to just raise the bar a little bit higher, okay, when it comes to men, because I hate the idea that, men are just naturally sexual, so it's really up to women to, like, draw the shields and the blocks and wear a chastity belt and all that stuff. Like, I think it's a very outdated thing and a very sexist mindset, actually, to keep, you know, making these excuses for men and placing all of the burden and all the responsibility. And when a woman doesn't fulfill that responsibility, she's a slut, she's a terrible person, and it fucks with the entire idea of her womanhood. And I think that's very relevant to a recent issue about certain celebrities who have been caught like being not loyal or home wrecking and all that stuff. And while I do not condone cheating at all, I really do not condone it. I think you can be totally against the whole cheating thing. You can be totally against condoning or being an apologist for cheating, while also pointing out that some criticisms are solely very misogynistic and really just attacks a woman for being sexual compared to a man's infidelity. You know, a lot of the times we're so focused on like, oh my god, I can't believe she said that, I can't believe she's a sexual person. And God forbid, it's fine for a woman to be a sexual person. Women are allowed to feel those things. But it's just, I just see too many posts. Sorry, if you're not Filipino, you have no idea what I'm talking about. But if you're Filipino, you're probably living under a rock if you don't know what I'm talking about. I just think we need to, you know, raise the standard. Because I can't be reading these comments or like these tweets that are saying, well, the standard for men is already really low. You already expect that men are gonna cheat. You already expect that men are pigs and all that stuff. Like, why? Why do we keep being so okay with that? Why are people so okay with that? Like, I get it, there's bigger disappointment if you're really rooting for somebody because they're you know, more relevant or more successful and all that stuff. Like, you're really rooting for them because they're a woman. But you know what, I feel like it derails a lot of blame, which isn't very productive. And there's too much misdirected misogyny and criticism. A level of criticism is very much warranted. Okay, fine, it's cool, sure. But the misogyny and the making a woman being sexual like the butt of the joke is kind of, it feels weird to me. But I get it, you know? I get the anger, I get the frustration. Also, a tweet that really annoys me is the whole, it really makes you appreciate other people who get cheated on but don't say anything. excuse me? I see so many like, oh my god, they're so mature. They didn't even expose anyone, or they didn't say anything. Like, bro, can we stop glorifying silence? It's really up to the person if they want to stay silent, but it's so weird to glorify that like it's the beacon of maturity, when in reality it's a very insensitive thing to say when somebody's talking about their own manipulation and the gaslighting that they've been through. Like, it doesn't sit right with me. Anyways, sorry, I digress. What is this video about? This is not about this. Erich Gonzalez, by the way, did a phenomenal job. Love her. Amazing. This is not an attack on her. It's more of like a criticism on the direction, because they have her talking in like this weird baby voice.
Dalaga ka na? Dalaga na rin ako. Kasi pareho naman tayo ng edad eh. Pareho na tayong 14. Hiyahiya na talaga ako. Wala na akong mukhang may harap sa kanila. Nakita na lahat yung tagos ko. Dalaga na ako at pinata na siya. Pwede na kami magpakasal.
Because she's like supposedly 13 years old here, right? And she's like talking in this awkward baby voice, like, kasi nagpakasal kami. And I'm like, what is this? It feels so weird because she's like a grown adult. Like, I looked at her, she's like 19. She does not look like a 13-year-old. I hate it. I hate when grown-ass people act like babies. Like, it's not it for me. Unless you're like somebody's significant other, then okay, fine. I guess I get it. When you're actually acting like a child for, you know, millions of people to see, it's really not my cup of tea. And that rhymed. Like, show me what an actual 13-year-old looks like, you know? Like, show me someone with like really awkward crooked teeth or braces or acne or not a full face of fresh makeup. Like, just because you slap on 2 braids on someone does not automatically make them look like a 13-year-old. And like the baby voice, I don't know. I know that maybe there's like a few 12 to 13-year-olds who watch my channel. Do you guys talk in baby voices? By the way, if you're 12 to 13, you're not supposed to be here. But all I'm saying is, when I was 12 or 13, I was not going around being like, like, shut the fuck up, shut the little fuck up. Like, oh my god. Like, when I was 12 or 13, I was doing my best to try to be like, I'm mature. And if you're gonna write a character who thinks that they're prepared to get married and have and all that stuff and wants to be in a relationship, then you might as well make their character, you know, like very excited to grow up, I guess. But I don't know, maybe they have a different vision than what makes logical sense to me. Like a 13-year-old who has like really bad style choices. I don't know what 13-year-olds these days look like, but I know that back in my day, 13-year-olds like me, I had like zero fashion. I was like, I'm too cool to care. I don't care. Zero drip. Absolutely zero drip. But again, moving on to my next comment, I have a major problem with the styling of this movie, because she's so obviously being sexualized here. It's like the writers said, okay, we have to make her seem like a promiscuous girl, but at the same time she's so young, so she has to have a baby voice, and at the same time she has to be really hot. It's very weird because she is titified here. Titified. If you're watching this on YouTube, or like you can check like Spotify video or something, I'm probably flashing scenes here. She is titified. Like, I am a girl, so I know what a push-up bra can do, you know? And that is not what natural titties look like. I don't understand why they had to choose to titify her. Like, why? It's just it's so unnecessary, and her styling is always like these short dresses, and it's almost like lingerie baby doll-esque type of dresses, and it's just like it's like they're saying, so this is her character flaw. Her character flaw is she's a dumb little girl who wants to have sex. So she wasn't even adamant about having sex, by the way. She was just like, oh my god, I just got peer pressured into having sex. Like, that's her that's literally what happened to her. She wasn't promiscuous or whatever. It's just that it felt like her pregnancy kind of seemed like punishment for her being, 1, a kid who just doesn't know much, and 2, being titified and wearing these like these baby doll dresses or something. I don't know. It feels like they were like, okay, she dresses like this, we're gonna punish her for that. It's just so male gazy. That's my problem with it. Maybe it did speak to a lot of the youth at that time. I have no idea, but The reason why I'm even talking about all of this is because if it is true that Katorse, and not even just Katorse, but in any circumstance where a young girl has sexual experiences and portrayed in the media and mainstream media, if this plays a big role in the normalization of, one, sexualizing characters that are supposed to be young, and two, handling sex education, especially for younger people, I feel like it probably would have been best if it were dealt with a more feministic lens, maybe, or with more research as to how to really handle these types of topics, especially in the way that we should be interpreting or writing characters that are women. It's giving woman written by a man, In this case, little girl written by a man, especially in the show. She's acting like a weird Japanese schoolgirl here, and it does not sit right with me. It's too strange. Nakatikim ka na ba ng 15 años? Or in translation, have you ever tasted a 15-year-old? Is a question from a billboard advertisement of Napoleon Kinse that triggered numerous protests from women's and children's groups from February to April 2004. When I was in senior high school, I literally wrote an entire research as to how and why women are so often used to advertise alcohol, and let me tell you, it is not because they respect women's consent. This hideous billboard was built in 2004, and it directly translates to encouraging grooming or pedophilia in general. I'll put in the translations of what these little bubble texts mean. There's also this other billboard from the same ad, and it's 4 old ass men, by the way, these old crusty men, and the caption says, nakatikim na sila, magugulat ka sa sarap. Translates to, they've already tasted it. These 4 crusty old men have all tasted 15-year-olds. Be like them, which I don't know what aspect of these people are supposed to be desirable or admirable. Let's go call the police if only they cared. And of course, people are gonna be mad about that, because who the heck thought of this? Somebody designed this, and then before that, somebody wrote this, pitched it, somebody approved it, somebody designed it, and somebody approved that design, and then somebody printed it out, and then somebody put it on a billboard for thousands of cars to seize every single day. Really makes you think about how people's brains work in very big time industries like this, huh? Basically, what the company did is they tried to kind of defend it. The brand tried their best to say that it's really up to the reader. It's up to the reader on how they're gonna interpret it. If they think it's dirty, then it's dirty, but that's not our intention, which is bullshit and is just weaponized incompetence, by the way. They're not fooling anyone, bro. They're not fooling a single person. They are very much aware of what the double meaning of the ad is. It's this idiot lack of responsibility, or the lack of accountability, that really pisses me off. This is why I'm telling you, please set standards, because the lower your standards are, the more people can get away with being an idiot. If you're a woman and you're an idiot, you can't get away with it. You can't. You can't make mistakes. So why is it that other people can? And I literally cannot, I'm so tired of women in my life who are like, he deserves a second chance. It's really hard to find a good man these days. It's so hard to find somebody. I can't let this person go. If I let this person go, what's gonna happen to me? I'm gonna be lonely forever. Will I ever get a chance to find another love? My dude, please get your head out of his dong for 5 seconds and think for a second, just for a second. I think all women need to pull a South Korea. You don't even have to swear off of men. You don't even have to do that. But I think collectively, women need to start being more assertive. And I think it's happening, honestly. I think women have become much more assertive than they were a few years ago about their boundaries and their standards, because it's really this unawareness about these things that screws everyone up. Speaking of total unawareness, what even is grooming? Which is basically the entire topic of today's video, but I managed to yap that much. Fruz Kaviani Johnson, she is a child protection specialist from UNICEF. In one of her papers, she defines grooming. Grooming refers to how some perpetrators interact with and engage a child and sometimes others around the child to enable sexual abuse while decreasing the likelihood of disclosure. They propose 5 overarching stages. So the first is victim selection. Second is gaining access and isolating a child. Third is trust development. Fourth is desensitization to sexual content and physical contact. And the last one is maintenance following the abuse. So the initial stages may appear innocent and normal, but what later ones may involve more explicit attempts to desensitize a child to sexual activity, such as offering alcohol, drugs, exposing them to pornography, or sexually explicit dialogue. So think Colleen Ballinger, where she just kept asking like her very much children audience if they were virgins or if they've had sex or what's their favorite position. Like, it's strange behavior. So there's also some other signs. Some ways that predators tend to do that, or groomers or pedophiles tend to do that, is they give you a lot of flattery. They may praise you and then they start talking about like some sexual things. And then I think one of the most important parts is they want you to keep it a secret. Make sure that nobody really knows. You don't have to tell anybody about this, because if you tell anybody, then they're basically from my understanding, grooming is just like the phase that happens. It's what like kind of like reels you in at first. It's not necessarily doing the thing, but it is like the process, or like it's a type of manipulation that's being done to vulnerable people, in this case minors, or maybe even mentally unstable people, or people who are not that educated or don't have access to education. So it's not always, you know, being disrespectful or physically forcing you, or actually like outright forcing you into doing something. But, you know, predators are much smarter than that. They're playing the long game, or they could even be waiting for you to turn 18 or turn a legal age before they actually do the deed. Sources are saying that majority of groomers are people that a victim trusts, like maybe family members, someone in the same household, boyfriends, people that they're dating, people that they're friends with, and it's also people who are in a lower social class. That's not to say that, you know, people who are on a higher social class can't experience that. They definitely still can. But people in an environment where nobody's really being educated about this stuff, obviously they are less likely to be conscious about creepy behavior. I feel like that's a privilege that's not very much talked about. If there are children out there who are homeless or like in the streets, they are very much more vulnerable and more likely to experience all of this. Or if living in a household where it's very high stress, a lot of trauma, financial trauma, and the overall health of the household is just not that good, because that affects so much, like the income and the things, the information that you have access to. It affects also the safety of other people. Well, somebody mentioned a freaking Lemon Square contestant. I could not for the life of me find what you're talking about. The Lemon Square thing, I'm so sorry, I have no idea what you're talking about. I did find other variety shows where they managed to give platforms to pedophiles or people who are groomers. I don't know, there's just like this weird, I don't know if you can call it an influx, but there's like literally a segment on the new Itbulaga. Teacher ko noon, asawa ko na ngayon, which directly translates to, they used to be my teacher, now they're my spouse, now I'm married to them. Like, what? How is this a segment on a variety show? Who thought of this? Who? There's this specific one, because it's only the one I can tolerate. I think I enjoy Showtime. I love watching Vice Anchor shit. There was this contestant who had like a questionable age gap with her ex-boyfriend. And so, look, TLDR, the show is basically about two exes coming together. One of the exes are gonna like look for other viable mates. Mates, that's a horrible way to put it. But other viable people to date. And there was this portion where Vice Ganda asked one of the contestants, her name is Miyuki, because she was 17 when she met her ex-boyfriend, who was 25 years old at the time. And then Vice asked,
did you feel like you were groomed?
Which, of course, the girl was like, no, I don't think I was was groomed. He was always respectful. He was always kind and stuff. And then Vice proceeds to explain that there needs to be abuse, manipulation, exploitation, or something like that in order for it to be, just insert clip here.
Pero kasi yung grooming, according to us, to the psychologist na nakausap ng team, masasabi mo siyang grooming kung merong tatlong bagay na evident dun sa sitwasyon. Yung AME, abuse, manipulation, or exploitation.
Okay, upon watching that, I was like, isn't grooming itself abuse, manipulation, and exploitation? Isn't the action of grooming in itself already a form of manipulation? Is it not? Because I feel like a lot of the times when people say abuse or manipulation, or they automatically think it should be physical abuse, or there should be like a really like toxic level of like verbal abuse or something like that, and that's really not the case. I think legally speaking, and we're gonna be talking about the legalities of it in a second, but legally speaking, I think, yeah, I guess it's not illegal because the age for consent here is like 16. By the way, you know, I am by no means, I don't have the expertise and the resources and, you know, the budget of Showtime. Obviously, they have the connections to the resources in order to do that. But I think, well, this is just my opinion, but I don't think you can really ask a victim, so do you think you were groomed? This is absolutely zero hate to Vice, but if you're being groomed, usually the victim doesn't really know it. I don't think so. I don't think you can just ask if they feel like they were groomed, because obviously when you're already under manipulation, if you're already a victim, you wouldn't really know. And sometimes it takes years for somebody to even comprehend that they've been abused or manipulated, and that's why people don't usually break up with people that fast, or people don't report things as fast. But more often than not, when somebody does experience a level of abuse, a lot of the times it takes them a really long time, even years, to report it. And I know that because happened to me. So, and a lot of people in the comments agree as well. I'll read a few of them. They said, hindi niya na feel na groom siya at that time because groomers don't necessarily disrespect you, they manipulate you. Most of the time, you wouldn't even know unless someone else points it out. And then they said, weird nga naman for a 25-year-old to court a 17-year-old. Like, boy, you're out of college courting a girl that's in high school. Which is weird, like, regardless of whatever happened between them. Rule of thumb is, I think if you need to double check with a psychologist, or you need to, like, double check, or, like, I don't know, it's probably not a good sign if there's, like, a lot of doubt entering in the mind. Surprisingly though, a lot of the comments do pass the vibe check. It's one thing for you to not be aware of it, to not know the laws, to not know what it looks like, to not know if you're a victim of it, but there are some women out there aware that I feel like they're 100% aware that they're infantilizing themselves, and it's for the male gaze and it's for a profit, which I think is real fucked up. I'm speaking about people who are specifically infantilizing or contributing to grooming or pedophilia for the sake of profit or clout. Because when you normalize that in the media, or a woman does it very willingly, other women are gonna see that and be like, it's okay for me to do that. So if my boyfriend is into that, then I guess it's okay. I guess it means it's love and it's sexy, which isn't the case. Example being arguably the most bizarre things I've ever seen online, and I saw this during the pandemic. It was sent to me in like a group chat. It's this Facebook streamer, and she does gaming content, and we all know, I don't know if you know, but I know because I was exposed to it at some point. There was an influx of gaming streamers who are tittified to the core and basically sexualizing themselves while playing a game. One of them, oh my god, I think one of them, I forgot her name, but she was just like literally dancing in front of a Mobile Legends like screen. And I think I actually gave her stars. I was like, I support you, queen. Because I hated, okay, No, that's not in a way to parang, yeah, go sexualize yourself. But I was getting really sad because there were so many people just like being extremely mean to her in the comments. Sorry, this is out of topic. Anyways, this is one of the most bizarre things I've ever seen. To be fair, she doesn't do this anymore. But back then, I think it was around 2021 during that time, she would put on this baby filter, like an actual filter that makes her look like a child. There's like multiple versions of it, and she's an actual grown-ass woman, and she would wear like these little like buns thing on her head, which is fine, you know, like people like that. But a baby filter is really weird. I hope I don't need to justify why that's really weird. And not only is it like a physical, like a face filter that makes her look like a baby, but there's also a voice filter to make sure she sounds like a baby.
Hindi niya ako matatalo. Good vibes ako ngayon. Ayun o, may lumalipad-lipad o. Na lumilipad-lipad eh. May lumilipad-lipad na na alaga.
What the literal fuck is going on? And I go through her comments. All of them are men. Men are calling her crush. My dude. And the comments are like, panotis naman po, crushy. And I'm like, bro, that's so strange. Like, I get having like more of like a baby face. Okay, sure. Like, you know, some people just have baby faces. But the filters are very strange. And they're like sending stars and stuff. And I'm like, okay, go. I love when people get their coin. But with this, it's a little weird. I think we can agree that it's weird. Thankfully, it stopped though. It stopped. It's over. But I only know this because a friend showed it to me. But I don't know if this goes on in other platforms. This is why I think male algorithms should like be closely surveillanced, because like it's the weirdest, most bizarre things you're gonna see there. And this isn't only a thing that happens for women, because little boys are very much susceptible to this too, and I think it's very prevalent, especially in hookup culture, especially with MSM, men having with men. I don't think I am the best person to discuss this because, one, I am not a man, nor am I a gay man. So I don't know hookup culture that well, but I do know that it exists. And a creator who I think explains it very well is the Face Tat Philosophy. I think their videos are really, really good. It's like a shared experience for the community to hook up or to have some kind of experience, especially when they were teenagers, with random old men. There's also pressure, especially for twinks, to look a certain way, to look a little bit younger. And it's like an internal thing where they feel like they need to stay looking like a twink so that they get this like level of approval from, you know, other gay men, and it's also some form of male validation.
This has also caused gay men, and especially twinks, to cling to their youthfulness and how young they look because of this constant reinforcement that how you are is what's most important,
which is very dangerous if you're young, if you're teenagers. And since homophobia is still very much a thing, there's so much secrecy involved. And the thing that happens with grooming is one of, I guess, its prerequisites is to make sure that the victim of the grooming keeps everything a secret. So when someone is a closeted gay, or there's like closeting involved, it makes it so much easier to keep things a secret. But yeah, you can check out their videos. They explain it in very much great depth, but I just wanted to like briefly mention it because it really is like layers upon layers of issues. Now, in discussion of the law, disclaimer again, this is all just from my understanding. Please correct me if I'm wrong. The thing is, our age for consent was 12 years old. Literally 12 years old. So if you were a 13-year-old being victimized by someone who's like 40, essentially the law sees it as legal. It's fine. You're 13 years old. It means you consented to it. But that's up until 2022. So in 2022, they actually changed it. They raised the age to 16 years old, which in my opinion is still too young, especially if you compare it to international standards or global standards. The age of consent should really be the same age as when you're a legal adult. For multiple reasons, this is very, very problematic. There is a policy statement that UNICEF came up with. They mentioned why this is a very much problematic age and why it's too low. Granted, this was made before it was recently updated to 16 years old, but I think it's still very much applicable. So one of the problems with a low age for consent is, one, studies show that this age is far from the age when the emotional and decision-making centers of the brain reaches full maturity. And yeah, I mean, what the hell were we doing when we were 13 to 17 years old even? Like, we were still doing some really, really, really stupid stuff. I don't even have a developed prefrontal cortex right now. Like, what more like a 16-year-old or like a 12 to 17-year-old, like, or anything below 17 years old? How are we supposed to be expected to be making these decisions and to be able to keep ourselves safe? We adults and, you know, the people around us who know better, they're the ones who are supposed to be protecting us. And it is a collective effort to protect young people and to protect the youth. This is why there are so many minors on TikTok who are posting thirst traps. Like, you're a child, you're a literal child, please do something else. When I was 13, what was I doing? I was making Ariana Grande fan art. Maybe get a different hobby than thirst trapping, especially if you're a minor watching my video, which, by the way, you should not be watching. This channel is set to not for children for a reason. Second reason is this outdated minimum age stands in conflict with laws related to sex and sexual abuse, which prohibits minors from accessing contraceptives. See, do you see how ironic that is? You're old enough to apparently consent to sex, but you're not even old enough to buy the materials in order to have safe sex. It doesn't make any sense, bro. Family planning services and undergoing tests for HIV without parental consent. It is also inconsistent with other laws on consent, such as marriage, voting, entering into contracts, purchasing cigarettes and alcohol, and the minimum ages of work and criminal responsibility. It makes absolutely no sense for the age of consent to be that low when you can't even trust minors to do other things that an actual adult is supposed to do in relation to their body autonomy and sexual autonomy. Next, it doesn't follow the UN recommendation for increasing the age of sexual consent to at least 16 years old. Right now, it's already at 16 years old, but you know, it should still be 18. It should be 18. Lastly, government data reveals that ages 14 to 18 are most vulnerable to rape and child incest, which is why it should be at least 18 years old. You know, picture somebody who is experiencing sexual violence within their home, and they're not even old enough to leave the house because they're not even old enough to work. So how are they supposed to escape their situation at all? 5, the amendment of the law will also look towards addressing the asymmetrical treatment of boys and girls against sexual violence by providing equal protection to all children against rape. Prior to 2022, if a little boy gets raped, it's only considered sexual harassment or sexual assault, and it doesn't hold the same bearing as rape, which is obviously fucked up. So that's in terms of the age of consent. But for grooming, there's actually little to no laws against grooming. The only thing I could really find, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, but the only thing I could really find about grooming is in terms of cyber sexual harassment, and it is when you send porn or sexually explicit things to children. But other than that, there's almost literally no law. So if it happens in real life, in real time, almost, nothing. And for statutory rape is having sex with somebody raping somebody who's a minor. Intercourse is basically still a prerequisite in order for it to be considered statutory rape or for it to be in any way punishable by law. If there's no proof of intercourse, basically no laws violated, which means that, for the likes of, for example, the example we had a while ago, which is like Miyuki, the one from Showtime, and all the other aforementioned possible victims, like the celebrities mentioned a while ago, who are actually very knee-deep into relationships, they would never, ever say or admit to, having sexual relations with their partners, which means that the people who groomed them, basically their abusers and manipulators, their manipulators are completely off the hook. Trigger warning, a little bit of a story time. Skip to this time frame if you don't want to hear it. When I eventually graduated from Disney princesses, I moved towards TV shows, girly pop TV TV shows, which was Totally Spies and Kim Possible. And my friends and I, we would stay in school, like after class was very much over, we would go explore out in the trees and the rocks and pretend like we found some kind of evidence. And something about those cartoons just really made me feel empowered because they were like kicking butt, and it just, till this day, I still love it. I even use Totally Spies sound effects whenever I make videos. And so I would take the school bus. My house was pretty far from my school before, and so when I was a kid, I would say I have actually zero clue how old I was. I say I would be like in the first grade, second grade, third grade, something along those lines. Still very much in the age where you would, play outside and pretend that you're Sam from Totally Spies, I would stay in school. Typical Filipino school bus. It's not like an actual bus like you see in Western movies. There would be a driver in the front, and there would be a conductor. I don't know what to call it in English, or I don't even know if that's English, but there would be another person handling all of the school bags, because we'd had like heavy school bags when we were kids. We had like the stroller and all that stuff. And so I would go home. It would be quite late, I guess. I would be the last one to get to my house because my house was always out of the way. It was always the furthest. And you know what? Let's just name drop him. Fuck him. Okay? His name is Kuya Dodong. I was a kid, and Kuya Dodong, I think it was like first grade probably, first or third grade. And I would look out the window and just be like, okay, I'm tired from the day. I don't really want to interact with anybody. Just waiting to get dropped off to my house. Started doing this thing where he said, sit next to me. You should sit next to me, Angel. Imagine little tiny little Angel. Not a clue in the world. Actually, no, I had a little bit of a clue. And then I'd be like, okay, I guess. I just didn't want to be rude. I would sit in front of him rather than next to him, and he would always say, come sit next to me. And then the first time I was like, okay, sure. Just needed to sit next to him, and he would make me lean over to him, just backwards. And I was like, okay, it's just a lean. It's just sitting. I guess he probably thinks I'm like his little sister or like a little daughter, And once or twice sat next to him. Didn't make me very comfortable. I didn't know how to say no to anyone. And then I think around the third or fourth time, he did this weird thing. I'm still in my school uniform, where he just made me sit next to him, and he full on reached into my skirt and completely lifted it up and tried to grab me. And then I was like, I immediately pushed it the fuck down. I was like, let me push down my fucking skirt. And then I went on the other end of the bus, and I was like, what the fuck was that? And then after that, I was like, that fucking sucks. That was weird and that was scary. But I didn't tell anyone. I didn't tell a single soul, because I was like, well, what's gonna happen? Is my mom gonna like scream her head off at the school bus? I don't know. I don't know. Like, I didn't want to create any drama. I didn't want to be an inconvenience. That was what I was scared of. I was scared to be inconvenient. And the only person I told was my best friend, Francine. And she was so pissed off upon finding out. And by the way, that's a lot to give to a fellow child. I really should have gone to an adult, but instead I went to another child. I didn't know any better. She was so mad. I remember she was like, I think she was already saying cursing or something, but she was just genuinely like really pissed off. And the fact that she was so pissed, she was such a bitch to him afterwards. Like, genuinely, she was such a bitch to Kuya Dodong, and it was so sweet and nice to see somebody be a complete asshole child and be such a headache to somebody who she knew hurt her best friend. I think the moment I told her about it and I saw that somebody was so passionately angry for me, I didn't even feel like I needed to say anything to anyone anymore. But I should have, I really should have, because it could have happened and worse things could have happened. Really should have told somebody. Thankfully, nothing worse happened, right? But it was nice to know that, okay, somebody said that that's wrong. Somebody actually told me, and that was a child who told me that. It was so nice to know that somebody wasn't going to Like, she never, like, didn't invalidate me, didn't say, well, you shouldn't have done that, or anything like that. She didn't say any bullshit. She didn't ask any stupid questions. She was just like, fuck him, he's a piece of shit. Like, she just went on and became a complete jerk to this guy. And it's very touching, you know? I feel like we really were totally spies, you know, protecting each other. I say this story because if I was, I guess, 13 years old at that time, which I wasn't, but I've had experiences where I was 13 years old. I actually know my age when, you know, something worse happened. I was 13 years old, and during that time, if I were to say anything, nothing would have happened because it would have been considered legal. And it's like, what the fuck is this law? What a fucking failure, honestly. Anyway, I say this story because I love how this generation, even at a very, very young and ripe age, even if there's some people, some idiots out there, a few out there, there's still so much more people who are open and parents who would educate them and had, you know, like access to education and was able to protect other people around them. I just love how most people in this generation, especially in, you know, the age of information, and I think we're all collectively starting to realize how gross all of this is and how much attention we need to put into protecting children. We should probably, well, one, we should probably raise the age of consent a little bit, just a little bit more, but also be more critical of, you know, our, what we consume, what we watch, our algorithms, and especially how we react in the case of SA. I think we should program our brains to believe the victim instantly. Instinctively make it part of your entire system. When somebody opens up to you, you don't say something stupid. You know how to react to that stuff. When someone around you is being manipulated and you see it, or when you see somebody who is being manipulative, put an end to that shit, shame it, be mad about it, like actually show the disgust and judge them for that. Anyways, that's all for today's video. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please subscribe to my channel. I don't know how to do outros.